What the hell is up, you guys? My name is Jamie Logan, and today I am here with Alex Perez. He is a global, worldwide yoga teacher and a licensed medical doctor. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Today, guys, we're going to talk about health and wellness practices, the importance of yoga, what it actually does to your body physically, mentally, spiritually, and give you guys some tips on how to implement healthy daily practices into your life.
Sounds good.
Amazing. So, Alex, why don't you just give us a general intro for those people that don't know you?
Yeah, a lot of people don't really know where I'm from because unlike the people from my country, my accent doesn't come out that obviously.
It doesn't.
But I was born in Paris, so I'm originally French, and I grew up in Switzerland, and now I'm living in Berlin. Somehow I don't feel like I belong completely to any of those places. I've traveled quite a lot, and now I feel a little bit, I don't know, free, free from any country completely.
That's why I originally introduced you. You are a worldwide global yoga teacher, right? Because you're doing retreats all over the world, which is super cool.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really liked. It was the perspective of being able to travel as a yoga teacher in the beginning. And of course, it's not easy to be able to get there because you need to I don't know, you need to like fill up your workshops or whatever you're going to be teaching abroad. But the moment I started to feel that this momentum growing and the possibility to travel and teach, I just started doing it more and more. Like this year, I'm going to be traveling all over. And I really love that because it kind of brings me to the realization every time I'm traveling that, you know, yoga, the word yoga means, one of the meaning is union. And it's like a sense that the more you practice, and you actually feel that, the more you feel a sense of unity, not just with like yourself or something higher than yourself, but also with others. And the more I'm traveling, the more I actually feel that all around. Wherever I'm going, I just feel this huge community of amazing people. And I've never been to that country, but the first time I go there, I feel at home already. And that's such a good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's super cool that like you have this presence to you as well. I just have to point this out that is very calming, very peaceful, and I'm like the complete opposite. I'm like a train wreck. I come rolling into a room and everybody's just like
I like that. I sometimes wish I had that energy too, you know, because it's cool to be grounded and everything, but sometimes I also know that, I don't know, like some people will react a little bit or will be a bit more receptive to like those types of more active energies or like a little bit more spicy energies. So, but I think it's energy is all about like embracing your own energy, you know, and just learning how you can be authentic with your own energy. And I think everyone will love that if you're just authentic in the end. So I think you should embrace that energy that you have.
Thank you. Well, definitely authentic for sure. And so you weren't, I'm guessing, always a yoga master, because yoga is one of those things where you can always get better at it. But you're, doing these poses that I didn't even know the human body could do. And so why don't you bring us back to when you first heard about yoga and how you got started in it?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, you'd be really surprised. I never believed I could do the things that I do now. Like, and I remember the first time I saw a teacher demonstrate those, like a handstand or, you know, even a forearm stand or any of those things. I remember the first time I was like, wow, I'm never going to be able to do that, but it's so cool, you know, and I'm going to work, like I'm going to try, you know, but I truly thought to myself, like, there's no way. You need to be, I don't know, you need to have like a special gift or something, or you need to have done gymnastics when you're young, or I don't know. So yeah, I was not there at all. I was super stiff.
How old were you at this point?
So actually, it's quite funny because tonight we're going together to a yoga class, and like that studio where we're going is where I took my first ever yoga class, and that was when I was 21, I think. So like 9 years ago.
Oh my God. I'm honored.
Yeah, and I hated it the first time I took a yoga class. I remember I was just sweating and confused And yeah, that's all I remember. Like, it was kind of dark, and I had no idea what was going on, and there were half the words I didn't really understand because it was Sanskrit or
they're like Shavasana, Chaturanga. I'm like,
yeah, it was confusing.
Yeah,
but and so it didn't click with me that time. Like, I went twice to the studio. I remember it was a summer that I was visiting New York, and a few years later, like 2 years later. Maybe I was living in Barcelona at the time. I was doing an exchange for a medical school, and and someone brought me to yoga in the park, and that teacher really clicked with me, and like maybe also the environment, being outdoors, and a lot of little factors basically, but it just made me really click and want to do more of it. So this is maybe something I can say for anybody just watching or listening is, don't stay with your first impression of doing yoga because it's confusing, and don't think about it too much. Just commit to doing it a little bit and to exploring different teachers and different styles. And you'll see, I can tell you one thing about yoga is that the more you practice, the better it gets. Like literally since the first time I practiced until today, it just kept getting better. Every year it gets more enjoyable, and I feel more and more connected every year to the practice and to myself. So confusing in the beginning, but just if you stick with it and you go a little bit beyond all the thoughts and the confusion that comes, I think there's really something amazing there.
And yoga is so much more than just an exercise. So many people are like, let me go to yoga, let me get my sweat on, let me be skinny. That's what skinny white girls do. What really is yoga? Can we break it down?
That's a big conversation, but yeah, I like what you said. Like, ultimately, I think there's no bad reason to go to yoga. Like, whatever gets you there, and usually, yes, it is very, let's say, it starts with a more superficial intention, maybe, or you want to do some physical intention, like you want to get fit, or you just want to move, or you want to sweat, or those are usually the intentions that are occurring in the beginning when someone joins yoga. But I as a teacher, I really don't care. Like, I think it's awesome, and I think it acts as a great gateway, because yoga, you asked what is yoga? Like, yoga is not just that physical aspect. The physical aspects called the asanas are just one part of this whole, and that's what makes it kind of special. Maybe that's what makes it apart from other physical practices, that the physical is just one aspect, and there's a philosophical, and there's a meditative aspect, and there's breathing, and there's philosophical and ethical. So, but what I love about it is that it's very, let's say, opened to anybody, and so a lot of people from all different places and backgrounds join yoga. No matter the reason, then they start entering this space, and then it opens up to deeper levels. And I think that's the true beauty of it. Like, maybe you come to get a nice butt in the beginning, but you come out like maybe a few years later understanding that you can get a lot more than that.
I always look forward to a yoga class, because being an activist and being somebody that's always caught up in a world where I am out on the streets, I'm protesting, my blood pressure's high, I'm like, I need to calm down, I'm seeing animal suffering. Yoga is really one of the only things that actually brings me back to that peaceful state, which I think we all have inside of us. It's just when the outside chaos comes into play, you just start drifting away from what your true nature really is. Yeah.
I mean, I admire you a lot. Like, any activist, actually, I'm just, I see them on Instagram and I'm like, wow. I admire that so much, and they created they created so much change for me, at least. But I'm like, it's a full commitment. It's a life commitment of just going there and just doing, giving. And yeah, I imagine all the stress, and like, I don't know if I could do it, honestly, even though I feel a certain calling for it, for like doing something about it.
Yeah, everybody's got their own way. I think by you offering yoga classes you're giving to me, and I'm actually receiving and taking, and I'm able, that's what keeps me able to do what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And ultimately, I think whenever you want to do something for others, it's kind of cheesy and you've heard that before, but like being good with yourself and being actually at peace and being clear of mind will make you go a lot further on what you're trying to do. So definitely, I think, if you're overwhelmed and if you're burnt out, you're not helping anybody anymore, And so I think taking care of yourself as an activist or of any sort, I think is really important. And going back within. Also, it can be really overwhelming and hard, like to see all this suffering. And sometimes taking a step back and like appreciating, what we have, I think is really important.
So as you begin to go inward and as you begin to become more self-reflective, more spiritual, more connected with nature and others and energy around you, can you talk about how that relates to veganism?
Yeah, interesting. Well, it definitely doesn't affect everybody because I know so many yogis that are not vegan, which is still a mystery for me, to be honest. But we can talk about this later. I think it's an interesting topic, yoga and veganism. But in my case, I can say, and I think that's the case for many vegans. When you start to feel content and quite happy with yourself, I think it becomes a lot easier to do something for others, or to simply, I can put it the other way. If you feel really miserable or unfulfilled, you'll hang on to the small pleasures of life, and it will be really hard to give up something more. You're like, my life is tough already. I don't want to give up meat, like my pleasure of eating this type of food or that type of food, or make that extra effort for someone else. I'm already struggling with myself. What I felt from me was that I was getting more and more content with my life and like happy and generally fulfilled. And so it wasn't, I don't know, at this stage where you feel that, you're like, okay, cool. Of course, it's never over. Like, you're never out of any suffering or anything. But when you're when your head is out of the water, you can start to think like, okay, maybe I can do something for others too. And I want to live more in alignment with my values because I have that energy now. I feel that I can give a little bit more because I feel quite good. So that's definitely something that happened to me. And I think to many others, whenever you start feeling better, you start to be able to give more.
That makes a lot of sense. And not only that, but when we consume animal products, we're consuming that violence, that fear, that cortisol, and that low vibration.
Yeah.
And so I think that as you begin to raise your own vibrations and as you begin to become more connected with the world around you, that no longer appeals to you. Those animal products no longer feel that they no longer appeal to you. And I no longer crave that. And also, I think also the longer I've been vegan, the more I've realized that it's this idea of it being a sacrifice is so far from the truth with all the amazing vegan food products that there are.
Definitely. And like I was saying, the sense of union, like the sense of compassion and empathy, basically, that grows. So the more you start to feel connected to others and to, in yoga, some call it like the universal consciousness or whatever, you start to know it expands even further than other humans, and you start to really see I like to call it like the humanity in the animal's eyes, like what we have ourselves, like you see that in the animal's eyes. And I think it's just it seems at least like a natural like path when you start to become more aware and when you practice like that. But like I said, I'm still surprised that there's so many yoga teachers or yoga practitioners that, and even more widely, like in people in the spiritual world and environment that are not vegan, and that actually even, I wouldn't say fight it, but like have, some, they like to argue against it, a little bit.
Where do you think that disconnect is? Why do they argue it?
I have a little hypothesis. I was at a lecture last week in Mexico. I just joined like one lecture from a course that was happening that my friend was taking, and and it was about the yogic diet, which was really interesting. So, and the lecture was awesome. Like the teacher was really great. It was very open conversation with everybody. There was about 60 people in the room, and towards the end, we started to mention like vegetarianism and veganism, because yoga is quite related to, does promote vegetarianism historically, but I can tell you a bit more about this later. And here's what started to come out a little bit from like the feedback from the people in the room. Basically, a lot of the people were starting to talk about, and that happens a lot, I think, in the spiritual world, basically about listening to themselves, listening to their body and what their body craves, and being very conscious, and how, sometimes they were vegan for 2 years, and then they felt that their body was lacking something, and so they went back to eating meat, and like, they made it a very conscious choice and whatever. And so I remember last week, like everybody was speaking about that, and I had to raise my hand and say something. And so probably everybody kind of hated me in that room at the end, but I said, it's interesting because in all of those debates that we're having, everybody's talking about, because the teacher said also something really interesting. She said, maybe sometimes the identification to being a vegan, or to being like very strongly having a very strong opinion about food, can kind of prevent you from walking further on that path towards like enlightenment or whatever, because you create such a strong identity that you're no longer, it becomes like something egocentrical, or something like you're moving out of like something pure, and you're just getting that new identity on yourself. And the more identities you put on yourself, the less like true you are in some way. And so I thought that was interesting. And my response to that was that, yes, it's maybe, but for example, I'm vegan, and even if that's the fact that I'm fighting for that, or that I'm identifying as that, doesn't get me to enlightenment or whatever, or like, it's I don't do it for myself, and that's the thing that's missing from all of those debates, I guess, in the spiritual world, is that like everyone's talking about themselves and their own journey, and like their preferences, and like their conscious decisions, and how they listen to their heart or whatever, which is great, but they're forgetting that somebody else is involved in that. And I think that's really the big thing that's like maybe misleading people in this spiritual world. It's great, it's conscious, but it forgets that they're victims in this choice, so that's
what did they say back to you when you said, I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for others?
That's when people start to bring out excuses, usually about why they do it, and like health things, and there was even like somebody said, I wish vegans would be more compassionate towards us, like who eats, some animal products, because we really feel like they're judging us or whatever. And I didn't say anything because I was already speaking a bit in that, and I wanted to, respect everybody. But I just felt the urge to say like, but where's your compassion, to the animals? That's being compassionate towards somebody because they're abusing somebody else. Like, obviously, I know it's just so far for everybody. It's just so far from our normal conditioning of thinking, and like to see animals as like as sentient beings. But when you start to make that shift, and when you awaken with that, everything changes. It becomes so clear. And I'm just a bit saddened that so many people still haven't made that. It's tough sometimes.
They make all these excuses, and then when I ask them what vitamins or nutrients they couldn't get on a plant-based diet, they don't know what to say. So it's these just excuses of, no, you went back to eating the animal products because it was more convenient for you, and it's a selfish choice to make. That's it. And I love that you really brought it back to what veganism really is and what it's all about. And veganism is about having compassion and empathy for all living beings. That's it. that's what veganism is. All living beings. So not just dogs and cats, not just, people, but also all living beings, farmed animals, the most abused animals on the planet. So it's really frustrating when these spiritual people go and actively participate and almost promote animal products, because it's like, you guys are supposed to be the ones that are awakened to this. You guys are supposed to be the ones that have that deep empathy, and there's no right way to take the life of another living being that doesn't want to die. Animals don't consent to being eaten. They're not like, here, take me, I'm here for you. It's like they have a right to be here just like we do. And so all those, yoga teachers, spiritual teachers, they're actually doing a lot of harm because they're trying to normalize it. And it is normalized, I guess, already, but you would think they would be on the front lines of change for sure.
I've rarely heard yoga teachers like publicly speaking about how they eat animal products or whatever. Usually it's not something, if they do it, that they will publicly say, but it's more something that I hear like in conversations or whatever with other yogis or other yoga teachers. So I don't think like in general, I would say, like the yoga community and culture is definitely towards veganism, vegetarianism, like animal rights. But I see also some trends, like I'm saying, in the spiritual world. And one of them, I also remember that from that lecture. One girl behind me said, started speaking about how, what if the animal like is killed, and she started to like pull those things about
quickly, humanely.
Yeah, no, not even. It was first of all, she said like they're harvesting the chicken, like instead of killing the chicken, which is, oh my God, it's insane. It's like, it doesn't make it less worse if you just use another word, you're still cutting the head of the chicken, against its will. But coming back to like those indigenous cultures. And how they do it like spiritually and with respect,
Babe, you live in Bushwick. You're not from the indigenous tribe.
I think she was from New York, probably a girl. I think, but yeah, it's. Anyways, there's so much to say about that. I think it's.
Yeah, I would just like to say one more thing on it, is that they try to use everybody else's situation as an excuse to why they should keep doing what they're doing, and it's almost inappropriate. It's like, leave the indigenous people out of here. You're not indigenous. You live in Bushwick. You drive a Volkswagen. You're not them.
I went to her actually at the end, and I told her, because she even said beautiful. You can kill an animal in a way that is respectful and beautiful. And I was like, wow. So I went up to her, at the end, and I said, do you really think like? And I came up to her and I said, I just want to ask a question, like out of love and compassion, like truly. I'm not saying that to trigger you or whatever, but do you really think there's a way to kill somebody that doesn't want to die and beautifully and respectfully? And then she went on, like, I don't know, it went far. She really went off with like different, like indigenous thing, and I don't know. I kind of lost track after a while.
I would ask her, where did you get your dinner last night? Like, do you plan every single meal of where you're getting that animal? Did you have that animal come from an indigenous tribe where you were part of that ceremony? Not that I agree with that at all. But it's just, they use these excuses, also, and then they go to McDonald's and eat a McNugget sandwich.
But like once a year, they were in this farm where those people harvest the chickens, and so they can say like, yeah, I've seen how it went, and that's really like a nice way to do it. But they don't even do it themselves this way. So I think it's Anyway.
Yeah, well, I think that this is a really important topic to cover in yoga, because we eat 3 times a day. So it's something that is ingrained in when it comes to yoga and spirituality and peace and love and sharing that with all beings. What we're eating does have to do with it. So why don't we talk about yoga and some of the benefits? I'd love you to share how it's changed your life and maybe some profound experiences that you've had at one of your retreats, whether it's an awakening. Tell me about that.
It's quite difficult to answer because it's been very gradual. And it's been quite different than anything else I've been doing in my life. Most of the choices or the transitions that I've done in my life were intellectually conscious decisions. You know, I was like, I'm going to start doing this, or I want to become more like that. And with yoga, I just started practicing, and then kept practicing. And then after a few years, I was like, something changed in me, you know. I didn't really know what it was, and it's still hard to put in words exactly. But one way I like to see it is that my awareness kind of went from up there down into my body. So especially studying medicine and like my past life, kind of very intellectual, and I remember really spending most of my life just really up there in my head. So I'm always thinking, and I'm always calculating and expecting and memorizing, and like really brainy, you know, energy, which was interesting and has had its positive aspects, benefits. But the moment I started to like tune in back to the body and trust, this will seem a bit esoteric for people who don't do yoga, and I was like totally in the scientific, super rational world, and I started to make my way a little bit more with one leg to the other side of more esoteric thinking and view of the world. And so I have a lot of empathy for like both visions, but I can say even from like the scientific mind that I have, that the moment I started to trust everything in general, and trust like the wisdom, the inner wisdom of my body. I know that maybe it doesn't make any sense yet, but everything in my life started flowing a lot more, and everything just became so much more smooth and easy, you know. And I felt like all of a sudden I stopped forcing against the flow of the river or whatever, and I was just going with the flow, and it was really an amazing feeling.
It's almost like the law of attraction. It's like the energy that you're putting out is what you receive back in a way. And I've noticed that when I'm on a consistent flow, when I am meditating, I'm able to make more level-headed decisions, and that helps. And also, like, I do fully believe in what you put out, you get back. And I think we also human beings are so powerful. Like, we're all sort of connected. We're all just made up of a bunch of atoms, and we're vibrations. Like, I might look solid right now, which, I mean, I sort of am, but technically I'm just a bunch of atoms together, and either sometimes my vibes are high, sometimes they're not. And so that's super interesting. It's wild how powerful we are as humans.
Rationally, you can look at it this way. You can try to understand everything with your brain, but it's quite limited. Like, the world is so complex around, like, everything that is happening, all the decisions around you, the choices, the environment, your thoughts, all of those things. There's just so much. And so thinking that you can solve all of your problems and decisions with rational thinking, I think, is limited. And the moment that you start to accept that, and that is even scientifically backed up, like, most of our brain is unconscious, and it's always working. It's taking all the input, and, you know, it's feeling the vibe of the people. That's why when you sometimes enter a room, you feel like, oh, I like the vibe here, you know. You don't know why. You cannot say why. You cannot say that it's the music or it's the light or whatever. You just feel a good energy or something, and that's like probably your subconscious mind just catching and like taking all that information without you consciously knowing it. And so the moment that you start to trust that deeper wisdom, you connect to actually more of your subconscious, and you allow it to express itself, I think then your life becomes easier, because it's like you're tuned into an even higher intelligence than your conscious brain. You're letting like the consciousness, the intelligence of your body. I like to call it this way because it feels very bodily, like physical, but it's you know, scientifically speaking, it's probably like your different parts of your brain. You're now more intelligent in a way, like, and you're thinking less, but you're more intelligent. You're more tuned into the world, and you feel things more, and so I think you make better choices, and you force things less. And I think that's one of the main things that I really felt was
definitely
happening.
That term, you know, that saying, trust your gut. Your gut's not really doing the sensing. It's that what you're talking about, that intelligence that our bodies have. We're able to pick up on these signals from people, whether it's facial expressions or things in just a matter of like milliseconds. Like your body processes that and picks up on it. It's super interesting. So coming from a medical perspective and being a licensed doctor, can you talk about how yoga scientifically is good for the body?
I mean, in general, physical exercise is, but I don't need to say that. I think everybody knows that is good for you, for your body, but also for your mind, and for your mental well-being and emotional. I think one of the you could break it in like different categories, but physically, obviously, you're gaining strength, you're gaining balance, proprioception, so like you know where your body is into space. It's a very complete form of exercise if you think about it, because you're balancing, you're moving slowly, sometimes faster, more static, more dynamic. It's really a quite complete form of physical exercise when you think of like the different body parts. There's not a lot of practices where you do back bends, when you bend backwards, or when you twist so much, or where you'll like stretch all the muscles. It's quite complete, holistic in that sense. So and very focused also on core strength, generally speaking, which I think is very good. But also mentally, like you're focusing for an hour. Just that fact is always something that I found so amazing. And I tell it to my students sometimes, I'll come to class and there's all those people in the class. And I'll say like, I'm so happy that you guys are here because, today you could be on Netflix, you could be on your phone. It's so easy to have distractions, and you decided to like show up in this room with no phone, nothing, and you're going to just listen to me and to your breath and to your body for the next 75 minutes or so. I mean, that is so precious, and this is really what we need in this world, more like, wow. When I look at that, I'm like, all those people consciously decided to be here and to be present for the next hour or so. It's beautiful. It's amazing. And so when you do this, you develop more focus, more clarity of mind, more equanimity. So like your ability to not react necessarily to what is happening, but to be a bit more grounded. And then you could speak of like emotional or even spiritual benefits. So as yoga, the physical practice, it can help you face some of your fears, like fears of falling, fears of bending backwards, fears of losing your breath or something like that. So you really often put face to your fears in the yoga practice, which I think can really affect your life. But it can give you boost in self-confidence, like the ability to balance on your hands, for example, for me was like a huge boost of self-confidence. The moment I started to be able to, I was like, I can control my body with my hands. That's an amazing feeling. And it doesn't have anything to do with the external view that somebody has of me. It's just like personal, internal. It's like I can feel that I have control over my body, and that feels really great. And so when you walk out in the world, you have that feeling, of confidence. But yeah.
I love that. You really broke it down into so many different layers. And I wanted to add that one thing I heard in a yoga class was that it's also a really powerful transfer of energy. So sometimes we could have energy built up in one part of our body, and the poses are meant to help that energy flow. And you really do feel that flow of energy. I mean, after a class, every single class, I do feel better in some way. You never come out of a yoga class and you're like, oh my God, I feel like so stressed,
Definitely. I think it's interesting because so from the like more, let's say, esoteric way of looking at it, you could say you have energy stuck somewhere, in like yoga. That's actually one of the definitions also is a practice to harmonize the flow of energy in your body. So, you're stretching all the different parts, you're opening, you're moving, you're contracting, you're squeezing, and in the end, you're just opening all those channels, and now the energy is like, it's flowing up and down in your body. And when you come out of Shavasana at the end and you feel like, you feel that, you feel like, wow, I feel whole, I feel my toes and I feel my legs and my hands and my face. And that's amazing. And you feel great. But I can look back at myself not believing in energy at all, being like, what the fuck is energy, and like, what is this? I don't, scientifically, I've never heard anything about like energy or chi or prana moving through the body.
Yeah, these fucking tree huggers.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. So, but even scientifically, you can explain that also very well.
Oh.
Like, instead of energy, you can think of simply awareness. So like being conscious of that part of your body. So like at the end of the yoga class, because you've stimulated every part of your body, and literally you stimulated your toes and the soles of your feet and your calves and your knees and your chest and your shoulders and your collarbones, in all of those postures, you've brought awareness to all of those, and then your awareness is just super expanded and open, and so you feel everything, and so it feels like a flow of energy. But you can also see it as like, it's not a different energy. It's just that there's always energy everywhere. There's always movement and things happening everywhere in your body. That is also scientific. Like, there's biochemical reactions happening from your toes to your nose to everywhere. And so, but when you expand your awareness, you feel it. And so you feel this, that you're not just, and maybe that's why we feel so good. You move away from the projections and the identifications and the thoughts that you believe. So like, I am depressed, or I am anxious, or I have this problem, whatever. And now, instead of that being you, those thoughts, now you are all of this. So your awareness is open, and now you feel that you're much more than just this thought telling you you're anxious or depressed, or this feeling, of fear or not being enough or anything. And instead, you're now in your body, and so you realize that being yourself is that. It's like a physical experience, and so I think that's one of the reasons we feel so good afterwards.
And I was really relating to what you were saying about how it can give you a boost of confidence and a boost of energy, or even like some type of intelligence. Like, I took a Kundalini yoga class, which there's a magic number, I think it's 118, and they make you actually do 118 cat cows, and by like the 20th cat cow, I'm like, all right, I'm done here. This is like ridiculous. And what it did was it makes you more mentally strong. Where after I took that class, yes, I was exhausted, but I did it. And I remember the next day I had to do something like stack a whole load of books, or like, I forget exactly what it was, but I looked at that challenge in front of me, and I thought back to the yoga class, and I was like, oh, I could do this.
Yeah.
Seriously. It was wild. And I saw how that connection happened just in my daily life. It's like, you take what you learn from these yoga classes and you can actually apply them to your daily life.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think that comes mainly from the fact that it is an embodied practice. So you will actually understand something, not just on the intellectual level, like, you need to be strong and disciplined, or whatever. Like, I can tell you that for 2 hours, and you can even say, do affirmations, for like 2 hours, like, I'm strong, I'm disciplined, I'm strong, I'm disciplined. It stays quite superficial. So it stays in like the level of your understanding of your conscious brain. But if you have to do like 108 or whatever cat cows, one after
108 is what it is.
Probably it was that number. One after the other, you and like, you start to reach those levels after like 20 or like 50, maybe you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, but you keep going, and so actually you're starting to understand strength and discipline on a physical level, which is like a really much more concrete way of understanding that. And usually when you practice yoga and you don't like something, like, and there's still so many things that I sometimes don't like, you're like facing something that's important, and that you can really learn from. So especially with those Kundalini practices, or like holding your arms up for like 20 minutes, and I did that once, and like, you have so many things that come up in your mind, like, I need to give up, this is bullshit, why am I doing this, like, it makes no sense, I'm gonna hurt myself, and you see, you just visualize all those thoughts and fears and things that are coming. But rationally, there's no risk of like keeping your arm up. Like, it will come down at some point and you'll be fine. And so you really transcend like all those things, and you get a really deep understanding of whatever you're working on. And I think that's what's so unique, or so special, let's say, so amazing about yoga practice, that you start to understand something physically, like deeply within. So maybe after all those cat cows or whatever you felt, you felt like you could actually achieve a lot of things that you thought you couldn't because you wanted to stop, but you kept going. And then whenever you were faced with another challenge like that, you were like, I can do it actually.
I did. And I've been impressed that like after I go to these classes consistently, I'm able to do more things. I'm like, wait, I could do a handstand now. That's cool. That's something I wasn't able to do before. I can actually do a full wheel. It's like you start to see your body improving more and more. And you almost get this drive to want to be able to do something where you're actually able to do the crow pose, or it's something that like you can always work towards.
Yes.
So what are some different kinds of yoga classes, and what would you recommend somebody that is new to yoga? Where do they start?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, about what you were saying, another definition of yoga is to actually go from one place to another. Like it is to go from where you are to somewhere else where you want to be, and to create that change for yourself. And like what you were saying about crow pose, like I'm not able to do crow pose, and I practice yoga and then I'm able to do crow pose. Or like I cannot speak Spanish and I'm gonna learn Spanish and I'm gonna be able to speak Spanish. Like that can be a definition of yoga as well. Like it's a practice of yoga. It means that you're creating something and you're cultivating something that was not there originally, and you're making that change. And I think that's also one of the big drives of practicing yoga, is that you feel that you're improving in so many ways.
My dad, for example, he was having shoulder problems, and the doctor's like, oh, we should try doing this surgery, that surgery. And then my dad started doing yoga and that joint pain went away.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So what are some different kinds of yoga classes?
Yeah. I would say the best type of yoga you should do in the beginning is whichever type that you want to go back to. So whichever type that you enjoy is really the one that you should be doing. Like we all have different backgrounds, ages, physical abilities, bodies, lives and minds. So certain types of yoga are going to resonate more than others. For me, it was like the really physical or physically challenging and demanding types of yoga that got me into it. And so I'm grateful for that. Like if I would have started with Kundalini yoga, I would have never stuck with it. Like for sure, I would have stopped after 2 sessions, because for me back then, that was not the thing I was seeking, or that was like too triggering or too difficult. And I wanted something that would like challenge me in the right way, and that was the physical practice. So I started with a type of yoga called rocket yoga and Ashtanga later. So both quite physically challenging. And yeah, that was my journey. But then the beautiful thing is that after a few years, now I enjoy any type of yoga, because it just brought me, it was what I needed to get started. And then you start to open up and you become able to do more and more things as you like soften and soften. So I would say, I don't know if I can recommend one type.
Which one do you teach?
I teach vinyasa. So it's kind of unique in the sense that I create my sequences completely, and I create my own style in a way. And it's quite a bit inspired from many other styles and many teachers that I've had along the way. But it's not compared to a style like Ashtanga, which is a set sequence, and you always do the same, or one of the few sequences that they have. Here I can create and do whatever I want, so that's what I like to do. So yeah, that would be my recommendations, kind of.
Yeah,
do what you like.
Yeah, I love vinyasa.
Do what makes you stick with it.
Definitely. And be sure to try different ones. I mean, there's a few studios that are donation based that are amazing. I used to go to this one in Brooklyn. It was called Baby Cobra Yoga, and it was donation based. They make it accessible to all people, and you pay what you can, and you don't have to put up $40 a class.
And there's online yoga as well,
which
is, free if you want to take classes on YouTube. That being said, I do recommend going to classes, because there's something really interesting that happens when you start going to classes.
I feel the
like
same
there's an extra layer of depth that happens, not just from the practice, but like the community that you're gonna meet there and the energy in the room. It's really a really nice thing. So for those who like started doing COVID or whatever online, that's great. But I would say if you have a studio nearby, it's really good to go and meet the teachers and feel the vibe.
So you travel all over the world and you host retreats. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is? What is a yoga retreat? What happens on it? Is the food there vegan? Let me hear about it.
Yeah. I don't host that many retreats because it's a lot of organization. And the problem with yoga retreats is that people sometimes take it as a holiday, you know, and so they kind of expect things to be this way and the room to be that way and the food to be that way. And that's not what I like to teach. Like I don't like to just cater for people, and like that's not really I find it very interesting, but it's not what I want to do when I teach. I want to focus on the teaching and like the content, the actual content. So I only teach about 1 yoga retreat a year. I make it a very special event. And those are, for example, in the one I just taught in Mexico, I kind of like to add very different elements that for me were super important in my journey. So of course we'll have a lot of asana practice, like vinyasa classes, but meditation, pranayama, which is breathing practices. But I also teach Thai massage. We'll sing a lot, mantras, and I even taught this year some vocal freedom exercises, so things to liberate your voice. We'll do different types of yoga, yin, sound baths, sound healing.
This
we
is
did
everything.
Ice baths. We did
I
a
need
lot
to
of
go.
Stuff. Yeah.
This is everything
it's
that
really
I love.
amazing. It's really amazing because I don't know. There's really something that happens when you just do all those practices for a certain amount of time, and you're in that environment with other people who are going through the same thing. There's something really special. But I'm teaching, most of the things that I'm teaching are teacher training, so training people to become teachers or to continue their education, or just workshops, which are like big, long classes, like 2.5-hour classes on handstands or on arm balancing or on back bends or flexibility or hip openers or things like that. That's what I teach most of the time. Festivals sometimes. And yes, the food is vegan in my retreats. Since when I became vegan, only about 2 years ago, by the way, then I was like, the food should be vegan in my retreats, obviously, and so I was starting to like really push for that, so that it was always like that. And some people complain, but now, not anymore, really, because I explain it well, and I also, like, when I promote the retreats, I also explain why. And I think when people understand why, like, it makes it a lot easier. But when it's just plant-based and they don't really know why, they can complain a little bit more.
Yeah, it's like, we don't want you here anyway.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So what are you trying to improve on when it comes to yoga? What are some of your goals as somebody that is, at one of the highest levels?
No. I'm not at the highest level at all. I mean, of course, if you look at certain physical metrics, like, you might think so. But again, it's a lot more than that. And I observe myself being sometimes very unwise, and I'm like, fuck, I have a lot of work to do still. And there's still a lot of love and compassion to develop in myself, and empathy and my ability to listen and my ability to like deal with others and things like that. There's so much that can improve. So yeah, I really feel like I'm just in the beginning of my own journey, to be honest. But I've seen already all that has happened, and that's really encouraging, and it's beautiful. But yeah, I have physical goals, like I want to be able to do a 1-arm handstand and to do like this type of thing or this, like I have all those, but those are very personal. They're just, they're what keep me on the practice. Because when you're practicing and you're moving towards different goals, like you're learning a lot of things on the way. So I think you should never settle really for where you are. Maybe at my age, it's more physical, like I have all those physical goals. But I know I can feel that as I'm growing older, like the goals are also shifting towards maybe more spiritual or mental goals of like being able to meditate better or be able to like have better relationships, things like that. All of those you could call yoga. And so, yeah, those would be my goals. Do
you ever feel that as you get deeper into this work that you find yourself moving away from some of your friends or family that are not on the same wavelength as you?
A little bit. Definitely, actually. Now I've moved to Berlin, so like all my past life is a little bit behind me, so I'm not with them anymore so much. but to be honest, yes and no. Like I did feel in the beginning a shift away from certain of my old friends, because I was like, okay, we're not aligned anymore. We don't think the same. But at the same time, I think the more I practice, the more I also open up to, seeing people for what they are, and like, ultimately I become a little bit more tolerant also to like all of the, and I see what I can also learn from them, because I don't believe you elevate yourself like higher so much. Like to some degree, yes, you're a bit more aware, maybe you're a bit more conscious of certain things, but they might have understood things from their experience, their life, that you haven't understood, and so you can learn from them. So I don't know, I don't like to see it that way. Like I like to try and stay very curious about what everybody can have, can share, or can give me, in some way, and never just think like, okay, those people are lower level, lower energy, I don't want to be with them. I mean, unless they're like being total, like obviously some people
you're like
can be really toxic, and then but that's for everybody, that's general.
You're like, then you are lower than me. I think what I found in my life is, it's like the more I practice yoga and the more I become spiritual, the less I want to go out, party, drink, do drugs. Not that I really did many drugs, but it's just a lot of my friends, I'm 25 at this age, that's what they want to do, is go out. Absolutely. And then finding that like common ground, it's like, well, we're going to a vegan restaurant. So some of my friends are like, oh, we have to. And I'm like, yes, we do. And so finding those activities of like how we can bond and do things together, I usually pick the activity, at this point. But then it's like you make so many new friends. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you're I don't like to see it that way so much, but you are evolving, but I think that's normal at any evolution. You're just evolving and you're changing, and it's healthy, and I think you should allow that to happen, starting to enjoy being with other people. And we're also growing older, and everybody in the world, by the way, we all are. So we're all like moving towards, like you say, partying and everything. It's also something. I think it comes from also the fact that when you become a bit more fulfilled and interested in growing or whatever, like those really fast and like spiky spikes of dopamine, like taking drugs or getting drunk or whatever, or compensations somehow, they're not just that. Like partying can be also a healthy thing to do, I think. But sometimes they're done as compensations. And so when you start to become a little bit more grounded and fulfilled, I don't think you need those compensations anymore, and you're looking for something deeper. Right. I mean, that's one thing that happens.
Right.
But I can relate to what you were saying about like your friends and whatever. But I have this for veganism. You say about like yoga, but I feel like veganism can definitely take me away from some of my friends, and like not because I don't want to be with them anymore, but maybe because they start to be triggered if I talk about it or whatever. And it's a really triggering topic for a lot of people, obviously, because you're talking about food a lot, and food is like very close to the heart. I don't know. I'm still a little bit, unsure of what my role is with veganism still, and how much I should like invest myself into being an activist in some way. It's still something that I'm thinking about a lot.
I say after our yoga class, we go to the local slaughterhouse and bust some animals out of there. What do you say?
I'd love to do that. Honestly, I would love to do that.
Reel them in real quick, guys.
No, but seriously, like, I have like this urge of, I can't hold it in anymore, like when you've seen so much, and when you start to really understand what goes on with, the animals and what we do to them, like it becomes really almost untenable. Like you just want to let it out and do something about it. So I'm there, like I have this feeling. The thing is that I also have my job and my community and all of this thing, and I want to find a way to combine both in a way that is like healthy in the long term, and that also will bring results in the long term. And I know that if I start yelling now, at every person that I meet, and I tell them they should be vegan, like I think I'm going to lose a little bit of that, okay, people are just going to be triggered and they move away, and they're going to block block it out, you know?
Right. No, I don't think yelling is the approach for you at all. I don't know if I see you necessarily going into Grand Central half naked with the anti-dairy
I love
sign.
that though.
Yeah.
I love that.
You could leave that to me.
Yeah.
I think, we all have our own approach. And I think based on who you're speaking to, you have to alter the approach. So as we begin to wrap things up, because we only have like about 5 minutes left, I just want to hear some of your daily routines and practices. Like, what is the first thing that you do when you wake up? And what's the last thing you do before you go to sleep? Not to be creepy, but I think it really is helpful. We just met and I'm like, already asked you. But yeah, just because I always reach for my phone and it's a really bad habit. I like start the day off. My heart is like beating out of my chest. It's not healthy. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, those, like the little things, the little routine things, the little like picking up your phone when you wake up or before you go to bed or not doing it, I believe has like such a huge impact on your life. It's insane. It literally changes your life, I think, whether you do those things or not. And all the little choices that you make, routine choices that you make, can literally make your life really miserable and like full of suffering every day, or really amazing. And it's just small things. But so first of all, I'd like to say that I'm not. My routine is not perfect at all. Like, I try to do the best every day, but there are still mornings where I wake up and I open my phone, and it reminds me every time how shitty it is and how shitty it makes me feel a little later, But so I want to say like I'm trying my best. My routine is most of the time is really good, but a lot of the times it's also not. And sometimes I have like little periods of like 2 weeks or whatever where I'm not, I'm on holidays, I'm not doing it anymore, or I'm feeling a little bit depressed and I'm not doing it anymore or something like that. So that's the first thing. Nobody has like a perfect routine, I think, in general. But ideally, I can say about how it was last year, 2023 at least, because it's kind of changing a little bit all the time. Is I try to wake up relatively early, ideally, because also in Berlin, especially in the winter, it's very dark, and if you're sleeping when it's light outside, you're missing out on a lot of light, and light is really important for your brain. So I start with a cold shower. Yeah, I know, but
you get out of your warm bed and go into a cold shower?
It is hard for like 2 weeks, and then it becomes natural. It becomes like you just do it.
Wow.
Honestly, like the cold shower is really amazing.
How long do you stand?
Like 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Do you like put soap or you just stand in the water?
No, I just like, I just rinse myself. It's like a wake up, good morning thing. And it like flushes out, all the endorphins, everything. It just makes me like open, okay, ready for the day, fully energized.
Do you wake up with an alarm or by yourself?
Yeah, I wake up with an alarm, although...
At like 6?
No, at like 7.
Okay.
Or it depends, 6:30, 7. Ideally, I want to not have an alarm. Yeah. That would be really the goal, but it's just tough. Like sometimes because
you're in different time zones too.
Yeah, I mean, even without that, if you're able to go to bed every night at the same time, more or less, like you can get rid of the alarm and you'll start to have the schedule, but like in your brain, your biological clock. But if you don't, and I often have like classes in the evening things, then it just messes it up. And so at the moment I have an alarm, but ideally I'd love to like get rid of that in an ideal world. Yeah. So I take a cold shower and then I meditate straight away, about 1 hour. Yeah.
You meditate for an hour in the morning?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's 1 hour is a lot.
I would fall asleep. I think.
1 hour. I think the way to do 1 hour is that you really, I'm able to do 1 hour because I did many 10-day courses of meditation. Maybe you've heard of those silent meditations where you just meditate for 10 hours a day for like 10 days. And it really gets you to a certain level of understanding of the meditation that you can do 1 hour. But if you just put like a meditation, like guided meditation, whatever, it's going to be hard to meditate for 1 hour in the morning. So I mean, any amount is good, like from 5 minutes to 20 minutes.
I could do 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. It's really great. Okay,
I'm going to start doing this. You guys too.
And then I practice. So before, I still haven't had my breakfast, and I would practice for like again, ideally like 2 hours or 2.5 hours, but more realistically speaking, it's usually like some 1 hour, 1.5 hour. It depends.
Wow.
You know, then I have like work to do, or the delivery comes in for whatever, and then it just kind of cuts me off, and I'm like, shit, it's late, and I have to, okay. And then I have my breakfast. It's usually about 10.
Like
when I have my
oatmeal,
breakfast.
smoothie?
Yeah. I have like porridge almost. At the moment, I have like porridge every morning.
I love it.
Just
easy.
Chia, flax seeds, almond butter, and like some berries.
Great.
Just so super, super good, super healthy. Yeah. Then I work like all the stuff that I have to do. I teach usually in the evenings. My classes are in the evenings. And then I don't really have a night routine, to be honest. I'm trying to develop one, which is to light up candles and not have like overhead lights or strong lights to kind of get me in. I think the evening is great for rituals and things that like journaling, you know, or anything that's like a little bit conscious. Trying to do something a little bit conscious before going to bed, because those, you know, like maybe you've heard of that, like the last half an hour before you go to bed is actually a moment where you're gonna kind of think about that during the whole night, or you're gonna like keep that cycle in your mind.
I watch Dateline. I'm like, people are getting murdered. I'm trying to figure out who it is. And then I go to sleep and I'm like wondering why my dreams are so fucked up.
Yeah, it does affect it like crazy. You know, when I was in university, people were saying, oh, you should study like your courses right before going to bed, because that's when you memorize it the most, which is true. Like, because I don't know, the last thing you do, you go to bed and now your unconscious takes over, but it's going to keep that, you know, that last thing that you were doing mostly like active.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's great or it's shitty. It depends on what you're doing. So if you're doing something really toxic at night, like before going to bed, it actually can be quite harmful, because you'll just kind of like stay with that. But if you do something like a little bit of meditation, you know, just 5 minutes, also just sit and breathe for 5 minutes, or journaling, I found really helpful, you know, kind of like summarizing what were my thoughts of the day, like what happened today, what do I want to do tomorrow, you know, and just get back into a really positive and conscious place before going to bed.
Breath
or just
work is so
music,
powerful.
Or breath work, yeah, or listening to music or playing music, or whatever. I think all those things are really important. But I think if you change like the first half hour of your day and the last half hour of your day, you can have an immense impact on your life just with that. And it's nothing, like everybody can do that, you know. Also, the first and the last moments of the day are usually the moments where you have the least amount of obligations. Like, no one's going to tell you what you have to do the first half hour that you wake up. You know, you're free usually before you go to work or whatever. Like, it's not like you need to answer something or an email really quick. Like, no, you just woke up. You have your time, you know. Right. And at night also, like before going to bed, it's a time where you're not supposed to be working anymore. Usually you don't have to answer that email now. Like, it's okay if you answer it the next day. So, yeah, I think those are really, really precious moments to do something conscious.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This was so helpful. I think my audience especially is going to find this useful, because I think as activists and vegans in general, people that have a lot of empathy for the world and see so much suffering, they need these kind of practices to keep them stable and in the movement for the long run. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
This has been so enlightening to me, and it's inspiring me to want to take more daily yoga practices seriously, and also incorporate more of these routines in my life. So where can people contact you, reach you, and find you?
I guess the easiest is Instagram, Alex Perez Yoga. That I post almost everything there, and it also guides to my website, which is alexperezyoga.com. And then you find pretty much everything that I do, all the trainings, and if I come to your city or wherever you are to teach, I'd love to see you there. And yeah, thank you so much. I wish I could have asked you a lot of questions about veganism, because honestly, I'm really interested. I'm in that phase where I want to learn a lot about that, but maybe next time.
Well, we're headed to a yoga
switch
class.
Seats.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. No,
Right.
don't get me started. Well, do get me started, actually. Just, you know, it will be a whole long conversation, but we're headed to a yoga class right now, you guys, so we gotta run. You know where to find me. It's Jamie's Corner, and thanks so much for listening. Until next time, we'll see you around. Bye.